Hello, welcome to Rohmer Retrospective, a new series in which I'll be looking back at the filmography of French filmmaker Eric Rohmer. I recently picked up the huge box set from France that includes all of his feature films and most of his short films on Blu-ray and DVD, so I figured it'd be a good idea to make a series out of this and to make a video for every film as I go along, and my decision so far has been to go chronologically from the very beginning to the very end. And this is a box set that includes over 25 films from literally the 50s until the 2000s. So it's almost a 50-year span of a filmmaker's complete works. I'm really excited to dive into this. Let's just kick things off with the first film he made, the first feature film called The Sign of Leo. This was filmed in 1959 but wasn't released until 1962 and was pretty much a commercial failure. Didn't make much money at all, and I can kind of see why. Also, it's different from most of his other films, I've read anyway, in that he didn't write the dialogue for it. It does feature music, which apparently his later films don't do so much. And also, it's shot in a bit of a wider aspect ratio than most of his films would go on to be shot in a more square kind of ratio. I think 1:37:1 is the aspect ratio that he chose for most of his films. This one's a bit wider. Not complete widescreen, but a little bit wider than, you know, the square frame that you're used to seeing in some older films. Now the story is about a guy called Pierre who's an American living in France, and I didn't know this until I guess halfway through the movie when it kind of was brought up in conversation. I mean, he sounded French to me, and I read that this is an American actor who moved to France and had been there for I think almost about a decade before he made this film, so he really did sound convincing as a Frenchman, but he is in fact an American, and that is part of the character as well. And the film opens with him getting a telegram, and he calls up his friend and explains what the telegram is. The telegram tells him that his aunt has died, and he's overjoyed about this because she owns all these factories in Switzerland and so on, and he assumes he's going to inherit all of this stuff. He's going to be rich, it's going to change his life. He's living in relative squalor, he has no job, he has no prospects, he's an aspiring musician, and he's one of those people who just kind of is just bumming it and just kind of living day to day and getting, you know, help from friends and things like that, and not really making a concerted effort to build up a better future for themselves. But this thing is going to save him. So the opening of the film is him proclaiming to his friends he's going to become a rich man, and he says, "Come over, bring some money, I'll pay you back double. We'll have a big celebration of my inheritance." And they have this big celebration and get drunk and stuff like that. And then the next day, and moving forward from that, his friends don't hear from him. They don't know what's happened to him. And they find out in the papers that he didn't actually inherit any money. The inheritance went to his cousin. So shortly after that, we pick up with Pierre, and he's kind of just dodging it, just kind of going from hotel to hotel, you know, skipping out and paying, things like that. And he's just he's getting deeper and deeper as the film progresses, and you see the tricks that he's using are kind of working to his advantage, but slowly they start working against him, because when you live like that and when you do things like that and when you kind of skate around the law, or, you know, around the rules, eventually it's going to catch up with you. And then we basically have this hour-long section of the film where Pierre is homeless. Now, if you were to tell me before I watched this film that, man, there's an hour-long section of this film where it's just a guy walking around Paris not really doing much, I would have gone, ugh, and I would have been really reticent to stick that Blu-ray in and start watching the film, because it wouldn't have sounded that interesting. But I tell you what, this was one of the most captivating films I've ever seen that has completely uncaptivating content, you know. We see Pierre trying to get jobs, trying to find places to stay, trying to just do anything he can. And he literally is just walking around the streets of Paris. And to make matters worse, it's the summer, it's July, it's hot, it's sweltering, it's sticky, it's uncomfortable. And all of his friends, they've gone to the coast, you know, they've gone to you know, to enjoy their summer elsewhere outside of the city. So he has no support system and no prospects again. And you just see this slow but steady decline of this man living on the streets. And I wouldn't even say it's about living on the streets so much, because you really focus on those first few days where he cannot find anywhere to stay and will just sleep outside a cafe in a chair, or, you know, on a bridge, like just all these different things that he does to try and get by, and all the details, the minutiae of his day-to-day life, where, you know, he'll scuff his shoe on the floor and the sole will flap off, and so he gets some string and he ties the sole to, you know, to kind of tighten it up so he can walk properly. And then the string breaks, and so he needs to find something else, and these details are spent, so much time is spent on them. but it never felt boring to me. And I think the performance of the actor was subtly brilliant. I think, like I mean, his character is quite brash, but when he goes to that stage in his life where he is just kind of just wandering the streets, he's disconnected from his friends. He's disconnected from that personality where he could be that kind of loud and boisterous person, and we just see him stripped away of everything. You know, there's a scene where he's sat down on a bench and there's these women sat next to him and they're buying ice cream and stuff, and he's looking over and you can just tell that he's a millisecond away from just licking his lips, you know, but he doesn't do anything about it. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't speak up. He's stripped of his personality by being on the streets. I really like how the film shows you Pierre before he becomes homeless, because you then understand why he's in the situation he's in. It's because of his own shortcomings, his own flaws. He's the reason that he's wandering the streets. He hasn't found a job. He hasn't been making a concerted effort to set himself up for his future, whether it be weeks in advance, months in advance, or days in advance. You know, he's got nothing left because he hasn't had the foresight to sort himself out as an adult. So this isn't a film that looks at someone who's homeless because they've been cast out or it's reasons beyond, you know, anything they can control. This was completely within his control, and he really has no one else to blame but himself. Which again leads to a character that is, you know, hard to find sympathy for, but you still do because of his performance, I feel like. You know, and I think that's a really good part of the film. It isn't a film about someone who's homeless because things that they couldn't control. It's someone who very much has kind of made their own bed, and now they have to lie in it, or their lack of bed, I guess. It's more about luck and fate. And at the beginning of the film, when he thinks he's inherited all this money, he's talking about how, you know, he's going to turn 40 soon, and he knew that his luck was going to start turning around, and that he is the star sign Leo. And he goes on about how, you know, luck is very important, and his luck has finally come up and all that kind of stuff. And so it's this very ironic twist and cruel twist where he thinks that, you know, life has finally dealt him this amazing, incredible hand of luck, and it turns out to be quite the opposite, you know, and gives the complete opposite effect of what he was expecting. And instead of getting everything, he gets nothing. And I like how his friends talked kind of behind his back about how I'm worried what's going to happen to him when he inherits his money, because he doesn't know how to handle money. He's used to living on nothing. When he gets everything, and one of the lines is something to the effect of, I just see him fat, overweight, and smoking cigars, you know, just ruining his life. And I love that aspect of it too, that people were thinking he won't be able, he doesn't have the responsibility within him to be able to handle this kind of money. And then we see him, you know, again go to this extreme opposite, and I don't know what it was, but I just really loved this film. I guess I do think it's a great film. I love the story, and I love the way that it folded out, the way it took its time. It didn't drag, even though it really does take its time in those moments where he is just wandering around the streets of Paris, you know, across the river, through the streets and the markets. And that's another thing that's great about the film. It's mostly shot on location, and you just see Paris in the 1950s in so much glorious detail, in beautiful black and white. You know, it's almost like this feature-length postcard for the city, but it also focuses on the more dirtier and more unpleasant natures of the city as well. So it gives you kind of an interesting spectrum of different areas and different kind of you know, visual landscapes within the city, and, you know, lots of different variations and locations, and you see Pierre go to like desperate lengths where he needs to get food, and you're like, oh no, oh, and you kind of like, you know, recoil in disgust, but at the same time you're kind of rooting for him to steal some chocolate from a mother, you know, because, yeah, take that chocolate, you need some food, you know. It puts you through different ranges of feelings for rooting for him, I think. And he is kind of an unlikable person in a lot of ways, but when you see him, again, just stripped down to this shell, you really feel sorry for him. And yeah, I love this film. There's a small cameo by director Jean-Luc Godard, which I thought was really, really funny, just a kind of almost blink and you'll miss it kind of moment. And there are some funny moments in the film. And I thought that Pierre was such a charismatic and entertaining character in the first 30 minutes. And I just love the character journey. I really, really do. So I'm hoping that this will be kind of a sign of things to come, because I've kind of looked into reviews online and people are like, man, this isn't Rohmer. This isn't Rohmer. Like, you know, I'll skip this one completely. Thank God Rohmer found sex, you know, following this, because this was just dull, dire, boring. And I loved it. So I don't know whether this is going to be the one I love and then the rest I really don't gel with. That would be unfortunate. But it remains to be seen, I guess. And Eric Rohmer was 38 when he made this, which gives me a little bit of hope, I guess. You know, because again, 38, and then he made films for almost 50 years after that. Jesus Christ. But yeah, the Blu-ray was fantastic. I really loved the transfer. It was just gorgeous, and the black and white cinematography was just was excellent. And this is an interesting part of the film too, and that'll be a cool part of this journey going through these films, is kind of watching the film and then getting to understand what the cover is, because there's all these beautiful painted pieces for the front covers of all of the Blu-rays, which is really, really cool. And on the inside of the digipack you get the poster of the film, which is really cool. So yeah, and I don't want to talk too much about the ending of the film because it would spoil things a little bit. Because if anyone is to go and watch it, I would like them to watch it blind, I guess, and not know what's going to happen to Pierre exactly. Because that last 15 minutes is very integral, I think, to what really just sent the film home, you know, at the end. Because I really enjoyed the beginning, I really enjoyed that long, hour-long section of him just wandering, and then I really loved the conclusion too. So it was an uneven kind of 3-act structure, I guess, in that sense, but I think it really worked. It really clicked with me. I loved it. I think I've said that too many times by now, so there we go. The Sign of Leo, really, really good film. In fact, I'd say a great film. It's not for everyone though. It really isn't for everyone. I think a lot of people would be bored by this film. I think me 5 years ago might be bored by this film, but it just clicked. It really did click. So there we go. That's it for this one. If you've seen it, please let me know what you think about it, because it's not a film I've seen many people talk about. I could only find even a few reviews on Letterboxd and things like that, where again people were saying this isn't Eric Rohmer, this doesn't count, you know. So I'm kind of almost nervous to continue on now, knowing that. But I'm going to dive into the next one right now, actually. So I'll see you with that one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you.